Hi guys, it's me, it's Tiffany. You're here for Tiffany TV, bringing you one step closer to knowing divine. Maybe. It looks like I don't even have a little thing for that. Okay, well, bringing you one step closer to knowing divine. The divine within you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about free will, one of my most exciting, favorite topics to talk about and worry about and question and wonder and like have a little moment about. So I have been battling this concept of free will for many, many, many years. And it has been a journey for me to understand what free will actually means, because free will is a concept that really was presented to me from the Bible, that God gave us all free will, that we can be sovereign beings, that we have governance over our own choices and our own thoughts and our own decisions. And then there are all kinds of people out there who believe that that is just not so. And I would say that the more and more I learn, the more and more I read, the more and more I question and ponder and ask divine for clarity and understanding, the more I get it, and the better it is for me to understand what is really going on here, and do we actually have free will? Or is it that everything is sort of predetermined and everything is like predestined and it's all going to happen anyway, so it doesn't really matter what you do in any given moment because your choices aren't really your choices? But this is the thing that I've realized the most, is that free will is a separation-based concept, and that free will in oneness doesn't really exist because there is no separation. So everything is happening because of, or in part of, or in influence of the greater whole, which is the higher aspect of ourselves. So free will, as far as us individually, do I believe that we have free will? Some days I do. Some days I say, oh, if I make this choice today and I choose to text while I'm driving, even though I know that I'm not supposed to, and I get in an accident, is there a timeline shift and break off that goes, well, now there's two different versions of me because of this choice that I have made, that I now am going to live one version of a story and one version of a story, and that with every single choice that I make, there are all of these refractions that are coming apart from me, creating different timelines and different scenarios and different possibilities and on different frequencies of vibration. Yeah, I kind of believe that too. So do I believe that free will is really a thing? Or do I believe that every single thing that we have done and everything that has happened to us in every single moment before now has led us to exactly where we are today? Well, yeah, I also believe that. And this is the divine paradox, is that two things can be simultaneously true, and they can kind of appear to be in opposition of one another. And that is the struggle. That is where we have to have faith and trust and sort of step back from being in the center of it and try and see things from a broader perspective, and understand that when you're focused in on this little tiny thing, that you don't really see it all and you don't really understand the complexity of it as a whole. So I, at one point in time, when I read every single Neale Donald Walsch book and Conversations with God and all of the amazing books that Neale Donald Walsch has written, which I highly recommend because he's an incredible author, an incredible channel. He allows divine to speak through him in incredible ways and has wonderful messages for the world that I have always appreciated so much. I did join his online group and then questioned him about some of the things that he was suggesting or saying about free will. And I just want to read them. I just want to read it to you now. So, I understand that God is in and of all things, that oneness, communion with divine, is our true nature and ultimately what we are seeking in the highest form possible, and that nothing or no one outside exists outside of them, as stated in the essential path or the God solution. Essentially, God is everything and everything is God. The word predestination insinuates that there is only one destination, not necessarily that all the possible destinations are already known, as I believe it is with God, because I do believe that God knows all of the outcomes and all of the potentials and all of the possibilities, because God is all and God is everything. They already know our highest possibilities and desire that for all of us, because they can see or know all things beyond time and space. So, of course, our higher selves, who are God in a form, are always wanting the highest version for us. So they are encouraging, guiding, steering, leading us in a direction that is going to ultimately be the most beneficial for us. Did they speak of infinite possibilities existing all at once, as I was asking about divine? This is a difficult concept for us to conceive with our current time-space conditioning. In essence, there are many possible outcomes and infinite ways to get there, but we can always choose higher than the path we are currently on. Free will. Through choosing the way in which we perceive every event that we experience. So I believe that our free will is in perception, that we are given the opportunity to either perceive things in the shadow or perceive things in the light. And depending on what choice we make will determine how the outcome comes after that. And my newest realization is that is because when we see things in the darkness or we see things in the light, it carries a different vibration. And so by seeing things in the light, we naturally rise our vibration up higher and higher and higher and higher and higher to better and better and better timelines. And it's basically just a reflection of our vibration that we are emitting by choosing to see the light in every single moment. When I heard this, I got the image of a Plinko game with the chip at the top that has many different paths it could potentially follow to get to the bottom. So here we're talking about like infinite timelines. And even though all the paths are there, there will only be one path for that chip each time it falls, which we could consider lifetimes. So sure, there are all of these potentials, but there's only one way that it falls down in each lifetime. Doesn't mean you can't come back again and like be the chip again, the same chip. You can still be Tiffany living another lifetime where it's completely different, but the chip is still the same. But there are infinite chips, infinite boards, infinite paths, infinite destinations and times that you will go through the journey. So that means it's never ending, and that we can continue to go through this process again and again and again and again to gain all the experience that we need in order to rise up and raise our vibration the highest that it can possibly be through this experience. Please let me explain what I mean by divine orchestration, because Neil Donald Walsh doesn't believe in divine orchestration, and I do believe in divine orchestration. It is my understanding that there is an inevitable highest possible version of ourselves that we are all working toward, like God's idea or what God knows to be truly possible for the highest, grandest version that we could possibly imagine for ourselves. Did I misunderstand that? No, I truly believe in that. I believe there is a highest, most magnificent possibility that God holds in the mind of God. Call it the Akashic, call it like the everything, the void, the everything, that there is in pure potential, a possibility that for us that is like so high and so grand, it definitely stands and vibrates above all of the others. Some examples of God's higher ideas for humans that we may have heard before. 1,000 years of peace on earth, Someday returning back to the garden. Heaven, 5D. All of humanity coming together to become highly effective and efficient and aware beings. Humanity waking, highly enlightened beings. Humanity waking up to the illusion of separation and treating all with love as an extension of themselves. Oneness. I totally believe in that as well. If humans are being left to imagine our highest possibility without divine inspiration, I fear for the outcome. Historically, the majority of us have not been living our highest versions. The example of highly enlightened, what is the word he uses? Highly evolved beings versus humans being pretty obvious choices to show are lacking in key areas of existence. Choices that seem pretty simple to implement and adhere to, but over time, there have been sudden and beautiful insights towards something higher, like conversations with God, which have the power to shift the collective if we choose. In several books, God alluded to divine inspiration in personal thought, words, or actions, interventions of highly evolved beings coming to earth to spread seeds of love and new ideas of how to live higher versions of ourselves, not allowing the species to become completely extinct, and many more forms of guiding towards our highest expression through infinitely possible ways. Divine orchestration. That's what I mean by divine orchestration. That when God created us, or all things for that matter, that they had an idea of the greatest possible version of ourselves and then gave us the opportunity to expand towards that idea. But as we grow and evolve, that idea becomes higher and higher and higher, as there is no end to the possibilities or expansion. God is creating us as we are creating God in an ever-expanding universe. I understood this idea to be divine will. Not preference, but divine desire. And as God's desires are our desires, we all want the same thing. As again, nothing is outside of God. Oneness. Can you tell me how divine will and divine desire are different as you see them? This was my request to Neil. Like a symphony, divine leads, guides, divine orchestra in motion, and allows us all through our own choice, free will, to realize our highest potential. Would you like to be a part of this? Which we then get to witness as reality. As there is nothing outside of God or oneness, all inspiration, thought, word, or action within ourselves is in fact still divine. And as these things happen naturally without us willing them to be so, it is all part of the incredible divine orchestration that is constantly seeking to know its highest potential through us. God is giving us signs and guidance all the time. They said we are mostly just not listening or seeing them. We are given glimpses of lives that are free from suffering, achieving the highest version of ourselves God sees for us in surrender to all that is. We are also given guidance on how to get there if we choose it. How we get there, I would consider to be free will. Not if we get there, which I would consider to be divine orchestration. If we allow God to flow freely through us, surrender as the highest vibration, knowing and trusting that God knows our highest versions already. If we allow God to flow freely through us without resistance or attachments, resistance or attachments to anything in particular, our lives will become infinitely better. Example, possibility of becoming a highly evolved being. That I would consider to be divine will or divine desire. It is in the allowance, free will, to this flow that this happens when we are in surrender to what they think is our highest potential, divine orchestration. Because outside of time and space, they can see the highest version of ourselves possible, and we only have a limited view from the present moment, meaning trusting God is preferable to trusting ourselves. Seems logical. In turn, enacting a divine power that flows through us to create our highest version rather than trying to control our outcome from our own ego. It all happens when we get out of our own way, allowing God to do what God does best and just watch the magic happen. We are given the opportunity to co-create the life we desire, free will and divine orchestration at its finest. Needless to say, it doesn't matter much in the end because it's all God and God knows we will get there eventually. There is a predestination because he also doesn't believe in predestination, like a predestined outcome, which is fine. There is a predestination if you decide to go to St. Louis, which is an example he gives in the book. If you decide to go to St. Louis before you leave and following all the signs to St. Louis on the way, that is where you end up. That is a predestination, unless you suddenly decide to go to San Francisco. Free will to go anywhere you like, or is it divine orchestration? Because San Francisco is actually better for you than St. Louis, and God is guiding you there through sudden insight. Who decides where the best place to go is in the first place? Because driving without a destination is insanity unless you don't care where you're going. But if God knows St. Louis is still the best place for you and you're heading to San Francisco, there will be signposts to St. Louis saying, this way to St. Louis, this way, in bigger and bigger and bigger letters. Divine orchestration, because they know this is still the best place for you. If you choose to get back on track and follow them. They don't care if we go to St. Louis now, because they know eventually we will get there, and it makes no difference to them when it happens. There is no or else, because it's still our choice to go or not, because they know all paths lead to the same place eventually, our highest versions. And that is why trust and faith are so important, because knowing that God also desires the highest version of for ourselves, we can trust that they are guiding us in the right direction, not with signs that say this way to St. Louis, but are actually taking us to the moon. I do very much appreciate that God has no preference as to how we get there. Example, detours to San Francisco. They have always given us a choice as to how much suffering we want to inflict on ourselves in the process. By not just going towards our highest version in the most efficient way possible, example, taking the highway straight to St. Louis, or maybe ditching the car and flying, an idea we had never even considered before. But ultimately, it's because they know that we will get to our highest at some point in time, no matter how long it takes, which is relevant to them because time does not exist in oneness. So technically it's all happening or happened already. And that's how they know that we will get there. The self-inflicted suffering happens when we choose not to see the signs and go toward what God already knows is our highest version and takes detours instead. Also, not intended to be suffering, but just another sign we're going in the wrong direction, especially if we want/desire to get to St. Louis and not to San Francisco. I guess it was not so much that I found these concepts in conversations with God, but that the information I received from conversations with God helped clarify these things and concepts from other sources in a way that was very beneficial to me. Example, divine dichotomy. So concepts I was unclear about previously were made clear to me through your text. Example, free will. I agree that God did not create us to be mindless minions doing their will or else, like a dictator of events that punishes those who don't do it their way, which is why I was struggling so much with the idea of divine orchestration in lieu of free will. Now I understand that they can both exist. It is and both, not only or. If anything, I would think divine orchestration is because God is love and wants the best for all of us. That their idea of creation from an all-encompassing, all-knowing view is truly the highest, and what benefits us benefits God. The original comment or question was really just wondering if you had any other insight on free will, as I appreciated your further explanations in Awaken the Species, and also to thank you for the concept of divine dichotomy, so I can both accept free will and divine orchestration existing at the same time. Thank you.